Our big focus this hour. Yesterday, we set 21 goals in the areas of energy independence, defense production, quantum computing, globalization of UPI, India's own mobile operating system, space, and 6G. The bottom line being that we need to have the audacity of hope to begin work in all these fields of the future. Today, we bring our focus on the four biggest drivers of the future of economics. In this part two of our Audacity budget coverage, the first big driver remains energy independence. Whereas India needs to become a net exporter of energy, the second big driver is defense production and energy exports, where India needs to make this a way of boosting our foreign exchange reserves. The third big driver is the blue economy. From becoming a shipbuilding country to ramping up our ports and deep ocean mission, work has started, but it needs to accelerate. The fourth and final big driver is the Swachhata economy, the economy of innovation and tech needed to clean our planet, which will be a major economy in the future. Let's discuss how Budget 2024 can work in these key areas. Joining us live is Viraj Gadhok, Managing Editor of Vibgyor Energy. We also have Dhruv Puryakasta, Director, Growth and Institutional Advancement, Council of Energy, Environment and Water, CEEW, joining us live. Kun Shah, CMD of Zodiac Energy, is live with us. Group Captain V.N. Jha, former Joint Director, DRDO, is live with us. Commodore Anil Jay Singh, former Navy officer, joins us live. Dr. Sharat Kohli, economist, is also live with us. Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, is joining us live as well. Professor Nalapat, let me begin with you first. Clearly, we need to work on these sectors where clearly, of course, growth can be driven from India for the entire world. And we're certainly hoping that tomorrow's budget will have, ways to drive further growth in these sectors that I just laid out. Professor Nalapat, can you hear me? Okay, I think we're having some trouble there with this connection. Dr. Sharat Kohli, why don't you take that?
Uday, could you repeat your question, please?
Dr. Kohli, I was asking about, these key areas, that I was listing out from, of course, energy, clean energy to, of course, defense and space, which to semiconductors, to, of course, drones, where we clearly need, incentives in tomorrow's budget for us to, become the leaders in the world in these key sectors, which clearly can be growth drivers for our economy.
Absolutely, Uday. I think some very, very comprehensive steps are needed, to push these sectors forward. They are all tech-driven, especially when you talk of space, you talk of renewable energy, you talk of defense. They are all very technology-driven, innovation-based sectors. And I think, where are we lagging? We need, because a lot of impetus on these sectors will come from manufacturing as well. Some of the equipments we need to manufacture. Suppose there is a prototype developed for, let's say, Swachhata, or there is a prototype of a new kind of defense equipment. We were hearing about China, using AI in space, for defense purposes. So there's a very high level of innovation, research and development, which is, I would say, R&D is linked to all the four sectors which you just spoke of. So R&D impetus, which government gave last time, was phenomenal when we heard the February budget. So I'm sure that needs a little bit of more augmentation, because R&D can push all these four sectors. We should keep that in mind. So I think R&D will run like a thread as far as all of these are concerned. But if there is manufacturing required, Uday, why, if there's definitely going to be manufacturing required, either by way of equipment or by way of prototypes. The economic survey came today. Coincidentally, the day we are talking, economic survey also came. And a very interesting piece of data came that, manufacturing hasn't really picked up from 2015-16 onwards till today the way it should have. And how that is reflected? Because the job creation in core manufacturing has actually gone down. Whereas some of that loss in jobs has been compensated by more people being recruited in trade and services, which means that the Make in India, or that line, which was the emblem of Make in India, somehow that line is not roaring. It's not moving fast enough. So I think if these sectors, all the four sectors, especially defense, very, very manufacturing rich, I would say, if these sectors these engines have to fire, then I think government will have to do something very seriously. And one thing which needs to be done is private investment, because government cannot go on spending on Swachhata, government cannot go on spending on defense, Government cannot go on spending on space. Private, space startups which are now started taking shape, they have to be encouraged more, and this will only come when you give more incentives. So I think these sectors are very hardcore tech sectors, and they are
Okay.
tomorrow's sectors, I would say, as well. So
Okay.
I think a very, very solid impetus is needed right now if you really want to give them a big push, Uday.
Absolutely. Let me bring you in here, Viraj Gadhok, on on energy. Today's economic survey did show that clearly vast strides have been made by us in solar energy increase, but there is still a lot of scope in that in that space. How hopeful are you that tomorrow's budget will have incentives and a focus on sustainable energy, clean energy, and solar in particular?
Thank you. First I have to applaud the Prime Minister and both the Finance Minister for in every budget until in the last 4 years, they've been talking something to do and bringing something forward for clean energy. May it be incentives for manufacturing in India for PLI. So definitely there's a lot of support. I am hopeful that tomorrow there will be more incentives coming in. We are looking forward, especially for solar energy to be coming under the purview of GST, or energy or electricity to come under the purview of GST. And this can help us pass on the input tax credit all through the value chain. So this is a definite need which we see today by incentives. We require interest subvention schemes, especially for the manufacturing sector. So there has to be a large capital flow to the manufacturing sector from the government by way of subsidized interest to gear up manufacturing capacity. Today in India, we have 50 gigawatt of solar module manufacturing capacity. We have under 10 gigawatt of operational solar cell capacity. China, for example, has 500 gigawatt of module capacity and down the entire value chain. So we have to also, the government also has to realize that India has to work with China to really move forward. And we need funds from the government towards R&D and even in skilling. There needs to be more skilling of manufacturing talent for the manufacturing sector to come up, because today in the solar cell manufacturing business.
Yes. Okay. We're losing you a bit. We're losing you a bit there. Let me get in Dhruv Purakasta as well. I'll come back to you, Viraj. Dhruv Purakasta, come in here on on energy, on what further the government can do to encourage these strides that we've already taken in in sustainable energy. We were talking earlier, of course, how the economic survey has also shown how there have been more gigawatts, of course, created, more hundreds of gigawatts created, but of course a lot of difference, as Viraj was just pointing out, when we look at our our creation and also how China has created in this same sector alone. Also the share of energy consumption between power, wind and solar, to of course still the reliance on on gases and diesel and petrol and whatnot. So how can we go cleaner, and how can the budget aid in that? But also, Dhruv Purakasta, on on this Swachhata economy that I was talking about earlier, innovation needed in that space as well, on tech and on entrepreneurs to think about how to clean up our rivers, and for businesses to be created as well that can do the same for the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. I'll take the question in two parts.
Yes.
One was the Swachhata, the clean tech, and one is the question of solar and renewable. I actually heard the chief economic advisor's presentation. Didn't really find much time to go through the economic survey, but heard him out. And what I find very interesting here is, instead of looking forward towards subsidies necessarily, the interesting part is they are actually striking a balance. He's talking about striking a balance and making choices while making a greener transition. And the whole issue around his what are the balances or what are the boundary conditions he's talking of? He's talking of energy security, resource dependence, he's talking of technology challenges, he's talking of land trade-offs, he's talking of fiscal trade-offs, labor, stranded assets, and possibly he's also talking about, in this story of clean energy, it is a question of choices that India makes today. And I found it really, really interesting approach of saying it is about renewable only, it is about growing renewable only, to coming and recognizing that it is about, and this brings me to a second question, it is about green economic growth. It is the way we want to look at things of saying that I have to necessarily transition, decarbonize, which is true. Whilst it is true, let us look at this as an opportunity. And herein lies the opportunity as you do front facing of solar, wind, EVs, and also industrial decarbonization. There's a huge value chain of manufacturing, which is where the PLI comes in. Now, the value chain of manufacturing is not dependent on only on India.
Yes.
That is has a market which is the world. So look at it like this. If I were to give you an example, look at the initiative of e-buses transforming the mobility in India to, let's say, million plus cities can create thousands of need and demand for electric buses. And what does that lead to? That leads to investments. And that I link it to the CEA's comment on saying that China plus one is also in two parts. Look, he gave examples of what Turkey did and what Brazil did. It's not about just balancing out the China plus one or competing with China. Let that investment and a trade off, what he called it in terms of China plus one. Look, ultimately, it is also about bringing in investment into the country. So, all the three pieces link together. So, if I were to put the pieces, there is transition in energy and a progressive transition. It's not a sudden transition. A progressive transition is good for all stakeholders. A sudden transition can be an exponential transition is not necessarily good. It may throw out imbalances in the economy, and it does get linked to manufacturing from the supply chain side, and that manufacturing is green economic growth for India. Now, coming to clean tech,
Yes.
ideally, I would assume that I would expect some support for the innovation ecosystem in
Okay.
India.
So support for the innovation ecosystem is needed. Yes, that's something that the government can do for this sector, for this space. Let me get you in here, Kunsha, on what strides have already been made, what has aided that in your opinion, and what further can the government do to drive further growth in your sector?
Thank you, Uday, for having me. Good evening to all. My take is like, as Viraj told, government has done lot many things in past for promoting solar manufacturing and solar sector per se. We have PLI in solar manufacturing already in place. But what further we can do is we have to create an ecosystem. Only manufacturing or only giving PLI will not serve the purpose. We also need to have a complete ecosystem for manufacturing to thrive. Like even today, if we want to make a solar panels, we have to import all the machinery from either China or Europe, and also major raw materials are being imported. So we need to create ecosystem in terms of machinery, in terms of logistic, in terms of raw material. Same way, India have a huge potential in exporting green hydrogen to world. We are poised at a very positive juncture where we have ample solar energy available, ample sun available throughout the India, and also we can make good green hydrogen, which can cater to the entire need of Europe. The entire Europe is looking to us for supply of green hydrogen and relieve their economy from crude based or coal based economy. But for that, we need to have hydrogen storage system. We can make hydrogen through solar energy in near future, but we have to develop also the logistic systems, the transportation of green hydrogen, the conversion of green hydrogen to green ammonia for transportation. Like that, we have to create those ancillary ecosystem for main products. Same way in solar and wind energy, the more and more energy we are deploying in the country in terms of clean energy, we need now to manage the grid, we need energy storage systems. So again, we need to, like the PLI in solar manufacturing, the government needs to come up with PLI in the energy storage system manufacturing. So these are the things which government can do to boost the transition of energy transition from conventional to clean energy transition. Thank you, Yudha.
Yes. That is something, of course, on the energy aspect, and I'll come back to the energy sector. But what about defense, Group Captain Jha? Because, clearly there is a market out there. India is making strides in our Atmanirbhar defense program. But what further is needed to boost defense manufacturing, defense production for the world?
Well, today you must have read in the newspaper that there is some proposal for modernization of Indian Air Force Su-30 MKI. And that is a fairly good amount of investment that is going to be there. I think to the tune of about 40,000 crore rupees. But leaving that aside, look, in the defense, today we have got some constraints of rate of production. There has to be a defense modernization for which Indian Air Force is already under the modernization with the LCA Mark 1, Mark 1A. All those aircraft, 86 aircraft, have to come to the production line and be delivered. There's a problem there. Newer technologies also are awaiting there in the aviation itself. Presently, we are working on the 4G technologies, but I think there is already 4.5 or 5G technology coming up there in the R&D lines. And futuristic R&D is the need of the hour. I'm aware that many of the DRDO labs are working in the futuristic technology for the defense, both Army, Navy, and Indian Air Force, including the strategic command force and the space technologies. But defense production has to be boosted. There is no two way about it. PM had given the call of Atmanirbhar in defense, and I'm glad there is a lot already having done there for both domestic consumption as well as the export. Government of India has given a scope for the exports to the tune of 35,000 crore rupees by the next year end or so. So that is happening. But newer technologies in aerospace is somewhere the constraint is coming up there. Look, today we have got the need of the aircraft for the aircraft carrier. We have LCA naval version, which is competent for the aircraft carrier. But then the talks are going on with the Rafale version of the Navy or the other aircraft for the Navy. That aircraft is to be procured. Next is the jet engine. We have already talked.
Yes.
404, 414 jet engine is going to come. Semiconductor industry, that has to come and has to take up the newer technological challenges. And in the space sector, Gaganyaan is already through. Chandrayaan 4, they are working for. Indian Space Station, that is another challenge that has to come. And the newer technology in the satellites, putting the nano and the micro technology therein. All these are in the pipeline, which is going to come. And last but not the least, the energy sector. Look, PM has given a call for free electricity all poor homes. For that, affordable solar energy has to come up there. Free electricity, it has to go to all the homes. Next, lithium storage. That is another area for storing the energy. Solar energy has to be grabbed and stored. So all these things are happening, and I'm very glad that all forms of green and renewable energies are happening.
And we certainly, there will be a big further push for that tomorrow as well. But Commodore Anil Singh, come in here. You can, of course, speak about defense and how we can further our, Make in India defense program. But, talk about, the blue economy. And here I mean shipbuilding. Here I mean, of course, furthering and expanding our ports as well. What are you hopeful for from the finance minister in this sector tomorrow?
I think the Prime Minister has very clearly articulated over the last few years repeatedly that the ocean economy is very important to India. In fact, he's likened in Mauritius, he said that the chakra in the middle of the Indian flag is how central the ocean economy is to India. He compared the two. So there is no doubt that India is basically a maritime nation. 90% of our trade comes over the sea. 80% of our energy requirements transit over the oceans. Our energy security is critical. Our trade security is critical. Our maritime security across the entire spectrum of activities is essential. We are going to be dependent on trade. If we are going to become a 5 trillion economy in the next couple of years and a 10 trillion economy by 2032, there will be an exponential increase in the quantity of trade that India will transact with the world. And similarly, there's going to be a huge jump in the quantity of hydrocarbons that we'll be importing, despite all the efforts being made to encourage renewable energy. But hydrocarbons are not going away anywhere in the near future. So the focus has to be on developing a sustainable maritime architecture and infrastructure. Sustainable is the key word here if you're talking blue economy. So India has embarked on 2 or 3 programs. One, of course, is Sagarmala. I think Sagarmala was a brilliant initiative. It picked up from where the previous maritime agenda had sort of taken us from 2000. There was a maritime agenda 2010-2020. A lot of that got subsumed into our Sagarmala, which is a 20-year port-led infrastructure development program. And there are about 500 odd projects in that. And regularly, these milestones are assessed, evaluated, and checked at the highest levels. It's even, I think, the report is presented to Parliament on the progress being made. We recently came to know of a deep water port being set up, Vizinjam, a second one coming up at Vadavan, a third one coming up probably in the Nicobar Islands. So all of this will greatly boost India's maritime economy, marine tourism, inland waterways. There are going to be 5 national inland waterways, like national highways, which are going to be carrying trade and people between rivers. All this had, got neglected over the years. We hardly had any inland waterways. Carrying trade by sea is still the cleanest, the cheapest, and the safest mode of transportation. Mm-hmm. That is something we must keep in mind, whether it is through our inland waterways, whether it is our coastal shipping. We bring in our neighbors into this, part of our Sagar policy, security and growth for all in the region, which is India's inclusive capacity building efforts in its strategic maritime neighborhood. We've involved Bangladesh, we've involved Myanmar, we've involved even landlocked countries like Nepal and Bhutan, giving them access to the Bay of Bengal. We've got the Maldives, we've got Sri Lanka, we've got the BIMSTEC mechanism. All of these are working towards creating a maritime blue economy in architecture and infrastructure in and around our neighborhood, which is very important for India. As far as security goes, yes, the Navy is doing a great job. We keep talking about it on various panel shows, even on your channel. Yeah. But I think, as Group Captain Jha said, we need to really energize the manufacturing sector in defense. We haven't yet done enough. And he gave the example of the aircraft carrier. The last aircraft carrier was commissioned 2 years ago. By now, an order for the third aircraft carrier should have been placed, or a second indigenous aircraft carrier. It still hasn't. There are constraints, there are reasons, there are budgetary allocations that have to be made, long-term committed funding. So and that's the important aspect. All of this needs committed long-term funding. It's not budget to budget. We're looking at 15-year and 20-year time frames for this with committed funding and committed policy commitment.
So clearly a two-pronged approach is needed. Viraj Gadhok, let me quickly draw you in here. For India, of course, to become energy independent, and then also perhaps the energy provider for the world if needed as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Uday. I think today the most important aspect before anything for all of us and the world ahead of us is to maintain global temperatures under 1.5 degrees of pre-industrial times. And India needs to, and as Dhruba also said, that the strategy India adopts today will be very, very crucial. And we should not focus more of our energies to reinvent what China has already built. We should focus on putting money towards R&D of new technologies in solar, which is like perovskite technology, which is an organic material, which does not require polysilicon. So money needs to flow more to the IITs and the educational institutes to make breakthrough technologies in this sector and collaborate with other nations to achieve both India and the world's energy security. And that building up of that ecosystem is very important.
Yes, Dhruva Purikas, come in there on, of course, also these innovations, as you were saying earlier, which are needed, in clean tech innovation as well. What can the government do, though, to further that? And also, should our strive be two-pronged to become energy independent and energy providers of the world? Or should we just, concentrate on achieving energy independence for now? And I mean sustainable energy independence.
Thanks. Two parts to it. What could the government do to support the clean tech innovation? Government of India has, over the years, launched many initiatives directed towards startup in India. There are two things that are still could be done. Part one is there can be a lot of crowdsourcing initiatives which then get supported and handheld for a longer period of time. If you actually look at innovation globally, you will understand that most innovation is state funded, whether it is ARPA or ARPA Energy. In the US, there needs to be an initiative to get the private enterprise into what is then financially called valleys of death. You will have to make them cross from prototype to commercialization through replication or scaling up. So up to that point, there is a job for the government to support. How it can institutionally do, I think there are some references which were made in a compact between government, industry, and academia. And that is exactly what Viraj was trying to refer to when he mentioned IITs. And that is precisely what I'm talking about. And this compact, which was mentioned in the economic survey, could be an instrument or an institutional approach to take it forward. Energy independence, for sure, I would rather call it secure fuels for the future. I think independence or not, it's about securing fuels which are future fuels, and one might need to look at a much wider basket of energy sources, which may actually mean ocean energy, which can mean tidal energy, which can mean geothermal energy, which is offshore wind, which can also include gas to a certain extent in terms of transition fuels to gas, and a mix of sources which makes the country energy secure, including solar and wind, which then would be leading it forward.
And clearly, yes, I will come back to you, Sharad Kohli, but Group Captain Jha, at the end of the day, of course, our forex reserves have gone up, as the economic survey has said today. Perhaps, defense export is another, big way of furthering our foreign exchange reserves as well.
Well, very much. I already told you earlier that the export is going to be, major focus for the defense. But we are talking so much of things. I feel tomorrow what is going to come are basically 7 factors. Those committed by Modi ji in his 2019 Independence Day speech, and in the last parliament session when he had said whatever he had said. Secondly, to bring India the largest economy, third largest economy, there are going to be the talk on that. Boosting ailing sectors and industries. That is another area which is also linked to the employment generation. Challenges of the 4 groups that the Modi ji has identified. That is the youth, farmer, women, and the poor. Women and poor are already looked after. Youth and farmer, for them, there are specific areas which is going to come tomorrow.
Yes.
Another one, I'll take 30 seconds. For Bihar and Telangana, there will be some give and take. So some special status step will be taken towards that. A populist measure for the coming state elections, that also you can expect that something for those states where the election is going to come. And the last is the goal of achieving developed India by 2047.
Okay, we were being ambitious, but you are being practical today on the show. Yes, and sometimes practicality also is important. Okay, yes, a closing comment, Sharad Kohli.
Well, as I said earlier, that all of these industries, all of these sectors will ultimately culminate into doing businesses somewhere. So I'm just putting a broader perspective. There were references of a peculiar LIC in today's economic survey. This LIC is not Life Insurance Corporation of India. This LIC is licensing, inspection, and compliance. So I think ease of doing business, all these sectors can only succeed if there is ease of doing business. Licensing should be easy. No inspections. Compliance should be easy. Unless these three are in place, all the discussion that we have done can become redundant, because ultimately it converts to commercial terms. Everything has to convert to, nobody is going to do research on maritime. Nobody is going to work on Swachhata, maybe to a certain extent, some NGOs, only on charitable basis. It has to be commercial. And when it comes to commercial, it's about doing business. When it's doing business, it's about ease of doing business. And ease of doing business only can happen if this budget tomorrow announces measures where India can further improve from the ranking in 60-something today. We are still far, far behind. We need to be very, very friendly as far as doing business is concerned, Uday.
Okay, let's leave it at that. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us. A lot of expectations from the Union Budget 2024. It's the first budget of the Modi 3.0 term. What will be in store is something we'll know in under 24 hours from now.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.